Hope you're well today. This one's going to be a little bit longer. Just want to talk about, I made 2 videos about tipping this week and how you can address that with your staff and you know, people's complaints or perception of what the tips should be. And so I just got my copy of Nation's Restaurant News talking about tipping points. And so they have a whole 3-page article on it. In the middle of a national crisis in the States right now, about fast food workers asking for more money and being underpaid, you know, saying that they can't live on $9 or $10, they need $15. And then on the other side now, there's been a lot of issues with tipping this year. The pastor saying, I give 10% to God, why should I give you more? The single mother writing single mom as a tip because on a $130 bill. I'm sure you've heard about them. They made news everywhere. So tipping has gotten in the news with obviously servers and restaurant industry people on the service level being very pro, and on the other hand, people saying servers shouldn't be tipped. It should be the restaurant pay them higher wages, and why should they expect to be tipped? And so there's both sides of the story. So this article comes after months of talk, and I could feel it boiling, which is funny because, like I said, I talked about it in 2 videos this week. In this article, they talk about some restaurants moving to no more tips. Just no more tipping option, but some special, you know, experts are saying that it's ingrained in the U.S. culture, even in places where tips are not usually allowed. Some people will leave a few dollars. Some restaurants have added automatic tipping, so 15% more on the bill automatically when you go there, and still some people will tend to leave more. They talk in there about a great article, some tip pooling issues in some restaurants, court battles that have been happening with some people over tip pooling, and some restaurants are saying raise prices, as I mentioned in one of the videos this week, to pay higher wages. Now, for a good server, that would mean you'd have to pay him 2 to 2.5 times more per hour than you're paying him now, even more so in some other areas. But so that would be very hard. Margins are already very thin. Profit per dollar, you know, or cents for most restaurants when there is a profit. So raising the labor cost would probably not be the option. Now, I think this whole thing of moving towards no tips, instead of dealing with the issues that are affecting us here, is basically an owner, operator, manager issue. I think that this is where the failure has happened, and I'll tell you why I think that. Let's look at the required skill set for a great server. I'm not talking your average server, I'm not talking about a week or a new server, I'm talking about somebody that's making money, that is impressing your guests when they come in the restaurant. What do they need to be great at it? Well, they need above average people skills, right? From dealing with different types of guests to dealing with chefs in the kitchen and tippy-toeing that relationship and making sure that they can make it all work and work with the bartenders to get their drinks. And so they need to be able to deal with all kinds of people that are in all kinds of mood, that are, you know, not always in the greatest of mood, and they still have to be out there and perform as a server. You also need above average multitasking skills, right? For those of you who've never served, it's very hard to understand, but for those of you who know what I'm talking about, when you're thinking about I have to run the wine glasses for table 2, the hostess is sitting, somebody down there, somebody out the door, I have to greet, the kitchen is calling me to run out these dishes, and they're going to go berserk if I'm not there within 10 seconds. I haven't greeted table 6, and I need to take the order on table 4. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on in a rush in your head, and for servers to be able to do that flawlessly where people don't even feel it, not every server is able to do it, but a great server can definitely do that. So that's another skill they need to have. The ability to handle high levels of stress. I just told you what's going on in your head on a busy night where there's all that going on, and now more and more customers are demanding, and with reason, and that's okay. You know, they're spending big dollars in restaurants. But now everybody's got allergies to, you know, list this long, and allergies are popping up, and gluten-free now is like every 2 tables you have some gluten-free people and specific requirements. So it's a heavy load on the kitchen, but it's a heavy load on the server to deal with that relationship and make sure that it gets handled properly and that nothing is skipped or missed. So there's a high level of stress going on, and now, you know, restaurant owners, they need to manage tight. So a lot of times there might be items that are missing, so you need to deal with that when you're with the guests, right? They expect a certain wine, a certain product, a certain dish that you've run out of or that you don't have because you're carrying smaller quantities of things. Well, you're the one on the front line dealing with that. So high levels of stress there. The ability to deal with every personality imaginable. You know, from the people who won't talk to you, that you have to get it out of them to create a good experience for them, to the bold who's going to be telling you what to do and how it's done and who he knows and do you know who I am, to the, you know, the little lady or the little, you know, little couple that's asking a gazillion questions about the food, and questions are great, but sometimes it can take a lot of your time when you're trying to manage. So you have to deal with personalities, and then sometimes chefs being the artists and the crazy ones, and kitchens, you have to be able to handle that. So you have to be able to deal with that and understand how when you talk about reading tables, understand what they are. And then you need, above all that, to create a good experience, an intimate knowledge of food, of wine, of drinks. More and more, your guests are very knowledgeable when they go out, so you need to be a little more knowledgeable than them, with food, with wine, with liquor. So you need to know the menu inside out and where it's from, and the wines and different varietals and food pairings, and different liquors, and now people are interested in all scotches and bourbons, and so there's a lot of requirements being put on servers. So do you sincerely think that even if we raise the hourly pay to $10, $12, $15, I mean, I live in Quebec. We get taxed on 8% of our sales, for our tips and all that. Do you think that you're going to get servers with that skill set in your restaurants? Because obviously you get 10% of those superstars, 80% of average, and then 10% of really sucky servers that you'd like to have out the door. But how are you going to get those really good servers on that salary? You won't. Because you know what? They're going to start their own restaurant and serve. They're going to change fields. They can go work in sales and retail and insurance. They can go work in real estate. With that skill set, they can do a gazillion other things. The reason why they're there is because it's a fun, exciting environment, and there's a tip at the end and the cash in the pocket, and that's the kind of personalities that it attracts. Now, otherwise, if you don't do that, and you're going to go pay 10, 12, 15 bucks an hour for servers, you're going to get career people that really don't care about the experience, that have no interest in learning more and in being knowledgeable, and it's going to become very sterile environment. There ain't going to be much relationship happening. There ain't going to be much more than phase them out for robots or ordering from an iPad, and they can just bring the plates to the table. That's all you're going to need. Right now, building rapport, building relationship with people is what brings them back. And I think that where owners, operators, and managers have failed is in thinking that people that are usually very young in this business, with limited skill sets, and they learn as they go and as they get interested, will just out of the goodness of their heart become that above average server that has the skill set I just mentioned. So I think owners should expect more from their servers and ask more, instead of just saying you need to show up on time, make sure you mention the special, and they're happy when they leave. If you that's all you require of them in the experience they provide, don't expect them to go above and start building rapport and start building relationship and get more knowledgeable. Which means also, if you're not expecting more, coaching and training every day is not something that you're pushing for. So you need to be reinforcing. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and you have different skill sets in your servers and different levels of skills too in that skill set I mentioned. You need to coach and train every day. They need to be learning something new every day. You need to be getting more comfortable with guests. You need to reinforce what they're doing well. You need to coach on what the opportunities that they have. A great way to do that, if you're not doing a pre-shift, that minute or two you spend with them before the shift, mentioning a new item, something you want to reinforce, a policy, something like that, creating that vibe and that mood for the shift, you should be doing that. And make sure they focus on the global tip. Okay, that's what I mentioned in one of my videos this week. Forget about the 8-5% tip or the no tip. On average, you'll get 13 to 17%. When you get 25, it's not because you're that great. It's because they were generous people and they like to tip well. Okay, so on average, at the end of the week, on the same schedules in every restaurant I've worked in, 23 years in the business this year, you will make the same amount of money every week. Every restaurant I've worked at, if I'm doing a 40-hour-a-week schedule, I'd make on average X amount. Then I drop my schedule down to 20 hours. Over 3 months, I'm making the same amount of money every week. I've worked independent, I've worked tip pool, it's the same. Okay, you're tipping pools, you're working 28 hours a week, you're making X amount of money. Next week, you'll make more or less 50 bucks on that amount. That works in every restaurant all the time. So train them to forget about the shitty tip and actually have a reaction on that. What happened? And let's correct it so it doesn't happen next time, unless it's somebody that just doesn't believe in tipping. But there's as many people who like to tip 25% as there are that like to leave no tip. So stop thinking you're a superstar when you're doing 25% and thinking that people suck when they leave you 5, 10, or nothing. Forget about it. Next, throw it in the bin, throw it in your binder, move on to the next table, work on that skill set and raise that level of experience for the guest, okay? And that comes back to execution in the restaurant. So as an owner, is the kitchen able to execute? Is the bar able to execute in a timely fashion? Are your servers trained to execute properly? And there's two things they're going to do. They create the experience for the guest. And how they create the experience for the guest, it's the ability to build a relationship and product knowledge and knowing those products. So I know it's a long video to talk about this, and I'm be surprised if a few people are still watching at this point, but stop with the no tipping or raising wages to levels that are not even going to touch what they can make tipping and being great. Okay, it promotes being knowledgeable and being great inside the restaurant, inside the industry, to become that top level servers, to get better sections, to build better rapport with your guests, to make better tips. It makes the others want to do it, so it raises the bar. And if you're doing your job as an owner and you keep coaching and training and making sure they don't focus, I know a chain, okay, it's as bad to mention or talk about tips with coworkers, and even worse with a guest, than it is to steal from the restaurant. You can get fired for stealing, you can get fired, and they have fired many people for talking about tips. So create this environment where I don't want you to worry about tips. You'll make your 15% at the end. Okay, it happens in every restaurant. If you do your job and you know it, you'll make your money. Make them understand that. Create that in the culture. It's going to take 6 months to a year. I don't want to hear about tips. It's there. It's there for you to get. It's there for you to impress the guests. Some people won't. Some people will. And you'll meet up in the middle and make your money. And that's the way that we fix the tipping issue in the restaurant industry. And stop thinking about stop the tipping and stop doing that. Go to countries and go to Europe and places where they don't tip. And service is very nonchalant. The experience is, if the food is good, it's great. But the server will never bring to the experience like they do in North America. We are lucky that we can go to restaurants with knowledgeable servers that are willing, because they make good money. Because you'd be surprised, if for people who are not in the industry watching this, of how good a living servers can make. But they work hard, they work long hours, and they have to spend a lot of time growing their knowledge and developing the skill set that I mentioned before, of the average above people skills, multitasking. That takes years to develop that skill set. These people deserve to be paid like that, and I think that if you train your team to understand that, we're not going to have this discussion about tipping anymore. So I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.